terrified young woman stumbles into the most dangerous place in the city, a private lounge owned by the most feared man in Chicago. She begs for protection, claiming someone is hunting her. He dismisses her as another liar, another manipulator. But when bullets shatter his windows and blood stains his marble floor, he realizes she wasn't lying.
Now, the most powerful crime lord in the Midwest must decide: turn her away and let her die, or protect her and declare war on an enemy he never saw coming. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. The rain came down in sheets across Chicago's Gold Coast, hammering against the tall windows of the Monarch Club like fists demanding entry.
Inside, the air smelled of aged whiskey and imported cigars, a scent that clung to the leather furniture and dark mahogany walls. The lighting was deliberately dim, casting shadows that moved like living things across the faces of men who preferred darkness to scrutiny. Nathan Cross sat in his usual corner booth, a position that allowed him to see every entrance, every exit, every person who dared enter his domain. At 38, he carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. His tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly across broad shoulders, and his dark hair was touched with just enough silver at the temples to suggest experience rather than age. His eyes, a cold shade of gray, missed nothing. They were the eyes of a man who had built an empire on the bones of those who underestimated him. He lifted his glass of bourbon, watching the amber liquid catch the low light. Across from him, Marcus Chen, his oldest friend and most trusted lieutenant, was reviewing a ledger of their operations. The legitimate ones, at least. The Monarch Club served as the public face of Nathan's enterprise, an exclusive establishment where Chicago's elite came to drink, gamble, and pretend they didn't know exactly who owned the place. The shipment from Detroit cleared customs without issue, Marcus said, his voice barely above a murmur. He was a lean man with sharp features and sharper instincts, the kind of person who could read a room in seconds and calculate odds faster than any computer. Our friends at the port are well compensated. Nathan nodded, setting down his glass. The gesture was economical, controlled. Everything about Nathan Cross was controlled. In his world, emotion was a liability, and trust was a currency more valuable than gold. He had learned that lesson early, watching his father's construction business get devoured by corrupt city officials and rival contractors. His father had died believing in the system. Nathan had buried that belief alongside him. What about the Italians? Nathan asked, his voice low and measured. The North Side had been quiet lately. Too quiet. The Vitale family had been encroaching on his territory for months, testing boundaries like wolves probing a fence. Posturing, Marcus replied, closing the ledger. Tony Vitale is all talk. He doesn't have the manpower to make a real move, not after we cut off his supply lines. Nathan wasn't convinced. He had survived 2 decades in this business by never underestimating his enemies. Complacency killed more men than bullets. The club's main floor hummed with the low conversation of patrons. A jazz quartet played in the corner, the saxophone's mournful notes weaving through the smoke-hazed air. Nathan recognized most of the faces. A city councilman, 2 judges, a handful of businessmen whose fortunes were built on foundations as questionable as his own. They came here because the Monarch Club was neutral ground, a place where deals could be made without fear of surveillance or betrayal. At least that was the illusion Nathan carefully maintained. The door opened, letting in a gust of cold October wind and the sound of rain. Nathan's eyes flicked toward the entrance out of habit. What he saw made him pause. A young woman stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone, her dark hair plastered to her face and shoulders. She wore a thin dress that clung to her frame, completely inadequate for the weather. Her feet were bare, cut, and bleeding. But it was her eyes that caught Nathan's attention. Wide, terrified, darting around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape. She stumbled forward, and the doorman, a mountain of a man named Victor, moved to intercept her. She dodged him with surprising agility, her gaze locking onto Nathan's booth. She ran toward him, her bare feet slapping against the polished hardwood floor, leaving small prints of blood in her wake. "Please," she gasped, reaching his table. Her voice was raw, desperate. "Please, may I stay? He is following me. He's going to kill me." The club fell silent. The saxophone player's notes died mid-phrase. Every eye in the room turned toward Nathan's booth, watching, waiting to see how the king of Chicago's underworld would handle this disruption. Nathan studied her with clinical detachment. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, with delicate features and skin pale from cold and fear. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of his table. He had seen this performance before. Desperate women, elaborate lies, attempts to manipulate him through sympathy or seduction. It never worked. "Victor," Nathan said calmly, not taking his eyes off the girl. "Remove her." "No, please." She turned to face the approaching doorman, then back to Nathan. "I'm not lying. His name is David Keller. He's a detective. He's been following me for weeks. He killed my roommate. He's going to kill me too." Nathan's expression didn't change, but something in her words caught his attention. David Keller. He knew that name. A detective in the organized crime unit, known for being ruthless, for bending rules until they broke. But a killer? That seemed unlikely. "Everyone has a story," Nathan said, his voice cold. "Yours isn't my concern." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rainwater. "I have nowhere else to go. Every time I try to run, he finds me. He has access to everything, cameras, records, police resources. I can't hide from him." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowed. "If you're telling the truth, go to the police." She laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "He is the police. Who do you think they'll believe? Him or me?" Nathan had heard enough. He gestured to Victor, who grabbed the girl's arm with professional efficiency. She struggled, but she was no match for the doorman's strength. "Wait," she pleaded, her eyes locked on Nathan's. "At least let me stay until the rain stops. Just an hour, please. If you send me out there now, I'm dead." Nathan's jaw tightened. He didn't do charity. He didn't save damsels in distress. His world operated on transactions, on leverage and power. This girl had nothing to offer him but problems. "Out," he said flatly. Victor dragged her toward the door. She didn't scream or fight anymore. She just looked back at Nathan with those terrified eyes, and for a brief moment, he saw something in them that reminded him of someone else. His sister, years ago, before she died, before he failed to protect her. He pushed the thought away. Sentiment was weakness. The door closed behind her, and the club slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The saxophone resumed its melancholy tune. Conversations picked up again. Nathan lifted his bourbon and drained it in one swallow. "You think she was telling the truth?" Marcus asked quietly. "Doesn't matter," Nathan replied. But even as he said it, something nagged at him. The fear in her eyes had been real. The blood on her feet had been real. 10 minutes later, the windows exploded. Glass shattered inward in a spray of glittering shards. Gunfire erupted, the sharp crack of pistol shots cutting through screams and chaos. Nathan dove behind his booth, his hand already reaching for the Glock he kept holstered at his back. Marcus was beside him in an instant, weapon drawn. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it began. In the ringing silence that followed, Nathan heard someone groaning in pain. He rose slowly, gun raised, scanning the room. 2 of his security team were down, wounded but alive. The patrons had scattered, hiding behind overturned tables in the bar. And there, just inside the shattered window, lay the girl. She was on her side, blood pooling beneath her. One hand pressed against her shoulder, where a bullet had torn through flesh. Her eyes found Nathan's, and in them he saw not accusation, but a terrible, resigned understanding. She had been telling the truth. Nathan's world, so carefully controlled, tilted on its axis. Someone had just shot up his club, violated his sanctuary, wounded his people, and they had done it to kill a girl he had thrown out into the rain. He crossed the room in quick strides, kneeling beside her. Her breathing was shallow, her skin already taking on a grayish pallor. Marcus was at his side immediately, pressing a bar towel against the wound. "Call Dr. Morrison," Nathan ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Now." The girl's hand reached up, weakly grasping his jacket. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you he was following me." Nathan looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt something he had thought long dead: responsibility. This girl had come to him for protection, and he had turned her away. Now she was bleeding on his floor because of his arrogance, his assumption that he knew better. Outside, through the broken windows, he heard the wail of sirens approaching, but he also heard something else, the screech of tires, someone fleeing the scene. The shooter was gone, vanished into the rainy Chicago night. Nathan made a decision in that moment, one that would change everything. He had built his empire on ruthlessness, on never showing weakness, but he had also built it on a code. You protected what was yours, and you destroyed anyone who violated your territory. Someone had brought war to his doorstep, and Nathan Cross never walked away from a war. Get her to the back room, he told Marcus. No hospitals. Morrison treats her here. Nathan, Marcus began, but stopped when he saw his friend's expression. She's under my protection now, Nathan said, his voice hard as steel. Find out everything about David Keller. I want to know what he eats for breakfast, where he sleeps, who he loves, and I want to know why he's willing to shoot up my club to kill one girl. As his men moved to secure the scene and tend to the wounded, Nathan stood in the center of his destroyed sanctuary, rain blowing in through shattered windows, and felt the familiar weight of purpose settle over him. He had tried to stay out of this girl's problems. Now her problems were his, and God help anyone who stood in his way. The rain continued to fall, washing blood into the cracks between floorboards, and somewhere in the city, a hunter realized he had just made a fatal mistake. He had backed a predator into a corner. Dr. Morrison arrived within 20 minutes, his medical bag clutched in one hand and questions dying on his lips the moment he saw Nathan's expression. The doctor was in his 60s, gray-haired and steady-handed, a man who had treated more gunshot wounds than any emergency room surgeon, and never asked uncomfortable questions. He had been on Nathan's payroll for 15 years, ever since Nathan had quietly paid off his gambling debts and saved him from having his hands broken by loan sharks. The girl lay on a leather couch in Nathan's private office, a room behind the club's main floor that few people ever entered. The walls were lined with books Nathan actually read, histories of war, biographies of men who had built empires and watched them fall. A single window overlooked the alley behind the building, currently covered by heavy curtains. The room smelled of old leather and the metallic tang of blood. Marcus had stripped away the girl's wet dress, covering her with a blanket while Morrison worked. The bullet had passed through her shoulder, missing bone and major arteries by what the doctor called dumb luck. She had lost blood, but she would live. Nathan stood by the window, watching the reflection of the scene behind him in the dark glass. Police cars had arrived at the club's front entrance, their lights painting the rain-soaked street in shades of red and blue. He had already spoken to the responding officers, spinning a story about a drive-by shooting, gang violence spilling over from the south side. They had nodded and taken notes, not quite believing him, but not quite willing to push the issue. Nathan Cross had friends in the department, people who understood that certain questions led to uncomfortable answers. But David Keller wasn't one of those friends. She's stable, Morrison announced, packing away his instruments. The wound is clean. I've given her antibiotics and something for the pain. She'll sleep for a few hours. Nathan turned from the window. The girl, he still didn't know her name, lay unconscious, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been when she was awake. In sleep, she looked younger, vulnerable. The bruises on her arms were more visible now, fingerprint-shaped marks that spoke of violence. Thank you, doctor, Nathan said, pulling an envelope from his desk drawer. Inside was $10,000 in cash, twice Morrison's usual fee. This conversation never happened. Morrison took the envelope without counting it. What conversation? He paused at the door. Nathan, whoever did this, they weren't trying to scare her. That shot placement was meant to kill. If she hadn't moved at the last second. I know, Nathan said quietly. When the doctor left, Marcus locked the door behind him and turned to Nathan. I've got people looking into Keller. Initial reports are interesting. He's been with CPD for 12 years. Organized crime unit. Decorated officer, multiple commendations. On paper, he's clean. And off paper? Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. 3 complaints filed against him in the last 2 years. All from women. All withdrawn before investigation. One of those women disappeared 6 months ago. Another moved out of state. The third recanted her statement. Said she made it up. Nathan's jaw tightened. He's hunting them. Silencing them. That's the theory our friend in Internal Affairs is working with, but he can't prove it. Keller is careful. He knows how the system works. Knows how to avoid leaving evidence. Marcus pocketed his phone. The question is, what did this girl do to get on his radar? As if summoned by the question, the girl stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with sudden panic. She tried to sit up, gasping in pain as the movement pulled at her injured shoulder. Easy, Nathan said, moving to her side. His voice was gentler than he intended. You're safe. You're in my office. She looked around wildly, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Then her gaze settled on Nathan. Recognition dawned, followed by confusion. You saved me. Why? Because someone shot up my club trying to kill you, Nathan replied, his tone hardening. That makes it my business. What's your name? She hesitated, as if even that simple information was dangerous to share. Iris, she finally said. Iris Chen. Marcus straightened at that. Chen? Any relation to... No, Iris said quickly, too quickly. It's a common name. Nathan exchanged a glance with Marcus. She was lying, but he let it pass for now. Tell me about David Keller. Start from the beginning. Iris pulled the blanket tighter around herself, her eyes distant. I met him 4 months ago. I was waitressing at a diner in Chinatown. He came in a few times, always friendly, always tipped well. He seemed normal, nice even. She laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. What happened? Nathan prompted. He asked me out. I said yes. We went on a few dates. He was charming, attentive, but then he started getting possessive. He wanted to know where I was all the time, who I was with. He'd show up at my apartment unannounced. When I tried to break it off, She touched her arm unconsciously, where the bruises were. He said I belonged to him, that I couldn't leave. Nathan had heard variations of this story before. Abusive relationships, men who couldn't accept rejection. But something about Iris's account didn't add up. That doesn't explain why he's trying to kill you. Men like that want control, not corpses. Iris's eyes met his, and in them he saw a deep, bone-weary fear. Because I found out what he really is. I saw his apartment, his collection. Photos of women, dozens of them. Some of the pictures were taken through windows, from across the street. Surveillance photos. And there were newspaper clippings about missing women, unsolved murders. He's not just a cop. He's a serial killer. The room fell silent. Outside, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle, tapping against the window like fingers seeking entry. Marcus broke the silence. Did you go to the police? I tried, Iris said, her voice cracking. I went to his precinct, asked to speak to his captain, but Keller found out. He has friends there, people who tell him everything. That night, my roommate, Sarah, she closed her eyes, tears leaking from beneath her lids. I came home and found her. He made it look like a robbery gone wrong, but I knew. He left a note on my pillow. It said, "You should have kept your mouth shut." Nathan felt a cold fury building in his chest. He had done terrible things in his life, hurt people who threatened his empire, eliminated rivals without mercy, but there were lines even he didn't cross. Women, children, they were off limits. It was one of the few rules his father had taught him that he still followed. So you ran, Nathan said. Iris nodded. I've been running for 3 weeks. I stayed with friends, but he found me. I went to a shelter. He found me there too. He has access to everything. Credit card records, phone logs, security cameras. I couldn't hide. I couldn't fight him. So I came here, the one place I thought he might not follow. Why here? Marcus asked. Why the Monarch Club? Iris looked at Nathan, and something in her expression suggested she knew more than she was saying. Because everyone knows Nathan Cross protects his territory. I thought if I could just get inside, if I could just make it to you, maybe he wouldn't dare. She had been wrong. Keller had dared. He had shot up Nathan's club, wounded his people, shattered his windows. The man was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Nathan suspected it was the latter. You'll stay here, Nathan said, making the decision without consulting Marcus. My men will guard you. Keller won't get near you again. You don't understand, Iris said desperately. He won't stop. He's obsessed, and he has the entire police department behind him. You can't fight that. Nathan's smile was cold and without humor. Miss Chen, I've been fighting the police department for 20 years. David Keller is about to learn that there are predators in this city far more dangerous than him. Over the next 3 days, Nathan's world shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. Iris recovered in a guest room above the club, guarded around the clock by his most trusted men. Dr. Morrison checked on her daily, monitoring for infection. She was healing well, physically at least. But Nathan saw the way she flinched at sudden sounds, the way her eyes constantly darted to windows and doors. Keller had broken something in her that wouldn't heal as easily as torn flesh. Marcus's investigation into Keller revealed a pattern that was as disturbing as it was methodical. 7 women had filed complaints against him over the years. 4 of those women were now dead. Their deaths ruled as accidents or unsolved homicides. 2 had disappeared entirely. Only 1 had survived by fleeing to another state and changing her identity. Keller was a hunter who used his badge as camouflage, his authority as a weapon. He selected victims who were vulnerable, isolated, women who wouldn't be missed or believed. Iris had been different. She had fought back, tried to expose him. That had made her dangerous. Nathan spent those 3 days planning. He called in favors, reached out to contacts in the police department, the FBI, even the mayor's office. He learned that Internal Affairs had been building a case against Keller for months, but they lacked hard evidence. Keller was too careful, too connected, but Nathan Cross didn't need evidence. He needed leverage. On the 4th day, Iris came downstairs to the club's main floor for the first time since the shooting. The windows had been replaced, the blood cleaned away. The Monarch Club looked as elegant and untouchable as ever, as if violence had never crossed its threshold. She found Nathan at his usual booth, reviewing reports. She had borrowed clothes from one of the club's female staff, jeans and a sweater that hung loose on her thin frame. Her arm was in a sling, but she moved with more confidence than before. "Thank you," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "For everything. I know I brought trouble to your door." Nathan set down his papers and studied her. In the better lighting, he could see that she was striking rather than conventionally pretty, with high cheekbones and intelligent eyes. There was strength in her, buried beneath the fear. "You didn't bring trouble," Nathan said. "Keller did, and he's going to pay for it." "How?" Iris asked. "He's untouchable." "No one is untouchable," Nathan replied. "Everyone has weaknesses. Everyone has something they want to protect. I just need to find his." Iris leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Then let me help. I know him. I know how he thinks." "Absolutely not," Nathan said flatly. "You're under my protection. That means you stay here. Stay safe." "I'm not a prisoner," Iris said, her eyes flashing with sudden fire. "And I'm not helpless. I survived 3 weeks on my own with a serial killer hunting me. I can help you." Nathan saw the determination in her face and recognized something of himself in it. The refusal to be a victim, the need to fight back. It was admirable and dangerous in equal measure. "We'll discuss it," he said, which they both knew meant no. But that night, as Nathan sat alone in his office, he found his thoughts returning to Iris. She reminded him of his sister, Elena, who had died when Nathan was 25. Elena had been bright and fierce, determined to make something of herself despite growing up in their father's shadow. She had witnessed a murder, agreed to testify, and the system had promised to protect her. They had failed. The killer's associates had found her in witness protection and silenced her before the trial. Nathan had been building his criminal empire even then, but he hadn't been powerful enough to save her. He had sworn that day that he would never be powerless again. The rain returned that night, drumming against the windows like a reminder of the storm still to come. Nathan stood at the window of his office, looking out at the city he controlled, and made a promise to the ghost of his sister and to the living woman sleeping upstairs. David Keller would pay, and when Nathan Cross collected a debt, he collected in full. David Keller lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, a neighborhood that straddled the line between respectability and gentrification. From the outside, his life appeared unremarkable. A dedicated detective who worked long hours, kept to himself, and maintained a low profile. His neighbors described him as quiet, polite, the kind of man who helped carry groceries and always remembered to hold the elevator. Nathan knew better. Monsters rarely advertise themselves. He sat in the back of a black SUV parked across the street from Keller's building, watching the detective's 4th-floor window. It was 2 a.m, and the street was empty except for a few parked cars and the occasional taxi passing through. Marcus sat beside him, reviewing surveillance footage on a tablet. "He's been home for 3 hours, Marcus reported. "Lights went out at midnight. No movement since then." Nathan nodded, his eyes never leaving the window. They had been watching Keller for 5 days now, documenting his routines, identifying his patterns. The detective was careful. He varied his routes, checked for tails, used burner phones for certain calls. But everyone had blind spots, and Nathan was patient. "What about his partner?" Nathan asked. "Detective Lisa Reeves, 12 years on the force, clean record. By all accounts, she has no idea what Keller really is. He thinks he's a dedicated cop, maybe a little intense, but solid." Marcus swiped to another screen. "He's also sleeping with him." Nathan's eyebrow rose slightly. "Complication?" "Possibly. She's loyal to him, but she's also a good cop. If we present her with the right evidence, she might turn. Or she might warn him, Nathan countered. We can't risk it. Not yet. The tablet chimed softly. Marcus checked it, then showed Nathan the screen. Our friend in Internal Affairs came through. This is Keller's personal laptop, hacked remotely. He's sloppy with his home security. Probably figures no one would dare investigate a cop. Nathan took the tablet, scrolling through files. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Photos. Hundreds of them. Women going about their daily lives, unaware they were being watched. Grocery shopping, leaving work, entering their apartments. Some of the photos were dated back years. And there were videos too. Surveillance footage from what appeared to be hidden cameras. He's been doing this for a long time, Nathan said quietly. At least a decade, Marcus confirmed. Maybe longer. The earliest files date back to when he was still in uniform. Nathan continued scrolling until he found a folder labeled simply I. Inside were photos of Iris. Recent ones, taken over the past 4 months. Iris at the diner where she worked. Iris entering her apartment building. Iris sleeping, photographed through her bedroom window. The final image in the folder was a video file. Nathan tapped it, and Iris's face filled the screen. She was tied to a chair in what looked like a basement, her face bruised, her eyes wide with terror. The video was dated 3 weeks ago, around the time she had escaped from Keller. I told you that you belong to me. Keller's voice came from off-screen, calm and reasonable, as if discussing the weather. I told you what would happen if you tried to leave. Please, Iris sobbed in the video. Please, David, I won't tell anyone. I'll do whatever you want. It's too late for that, Keller replied. The camera moved closer to Iris's face. You made me do this. You made me hurt you. Why do you make me hurt you? The video ended abruptly. Nathan handed the tablet back to Marcus, his hand steady despite the rage burning in his chest. Copy everything, Nathan ordered. Every file, every photo, every video. Then wipe his laptop remotely. I want him to know someone was there. That'll spook him, Marcus warned. Good, Nathan said. Let him feel what it's like to be hunted. Back at the Monarch Club, Iris was having trouble sleeping. The pain medication Dr. Morrison had prescribed helped with her shoulder, but it couldn't quiet her mind. She lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the club below. Even at 3 a.m, the Monarch never truly closed. There were always people coming and going, deals being made, power being consolidated. She had been in Nathan's world for almost a week now, and she was beginning to understand how it worked. Everything operated on a system of debts and favors, loyalty, and fear. Nathan sat at the center of it all like a spider in a web, pulling strings she couldn't see. He had saved her life. She owed him for that. But she also knew that in Nathan's world, debts always came due. A soft knock on her door made her sit up. Come in, she called. Nathan entered, still dressed in his suit despite the late hour. He looked tired, she realized, though he hid it well. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. A tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. I thought you'd be awake, he said, closing the door behind him. May I sit? Iris nodded, pulling the blanket around herself. Nathan took the chair by the window, maintaining a respectful distance. She appreciated that. He never crowded her, never made her feel trapped. It was a small thing, but after months of Keller's suffocating presence, it meant everything. I need to show you something, Nathan said, pulling out his phone. It's going to be difficult to watch. He handed her the phone, and Iris saw herself on the screen, tied to a chair, begging. She remembered that day with horrible clarity. The basement of Keller's apartment building, the hours of terror, the certainty that she was going to die. She had escaped only because Keller had been called away on an emergency, leaving her alone long enough to work free of the ropes. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. From Keller's personal files. He's been documenting his crimes for years. Photos, videos, surveillance footage. He's kept records of everything. Iris looked up at Nathan, understanding dawning. You hacked his computer. I have people who can do that, yes. That's illegal, Iris said, then laughed at the absurdity of the statement. Sorry. I know that's not really a concern for you. Nathan's expression softened slightly. The law has its place, but it moves slowly, and sometimes it protects the wrong people. Men like Keller hide behind their badges, use the system as a shield. I don't have that problem. Because you operate outside the system, Iris said. I operate in the spaces the system ignores, Nathan corrected. There's a difference. Iris handed back the phone, her hands shaking. What are you going to do with those files? Use them, Nathan said simply. Keller thinks he's untouchable because he's a cop. He thinks his connections and his badge make him invincible. I'm going to show him how wrong he is. By going to the police? Eventually. But first I'm going to make him afraid. I'm going to make him understand what it feels like to be hunted, to have nowhere to hide, to know that someone more powerful is coming for you. Nathan leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. He violated my territory, Iris. He shot up my club, wounded my people. In my world, that demands a response. A very public response. Iris felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen glimpses of this side of Nathan, the cold, calculating crime lord who had built an empire on ruthlessness. But until now, she hadn't fully understood what that meant. You're going to kill him, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to destroy him, Nathan replied. His career, his reputation, his freedom, and if he's stupid enough to come after you again, then yes, I'll kill him. But I'd prefer to let him rot in prison, knowing that everyone sees him for what he really is. There was a logic to it, Iris realized. A brutal, unforgiving logic, but logic nonetheless. Keller had operated in shadows, hiding his true nature behind a badge and a friendly smile. Nathan was going to drag him into the light and let the world see the monster. I want to help, Iris said again, more firmly this time. I know you want to protect me, and I'm grateful, but I'm not going to hide while you fight my battle. Nathan studied her for a long moment. What did you do before you started waitressing? He asked suddenly. The question caught Iris off guard. I was in graduate school, computer science. I was working on my master's degree when... She trailed off. When what? Iris hesitated, then decided Nathan deserved the truth. When my brother was killed, he was involved with the wrong people, owed money to a loan shark. They made an example of him. After that, I couldn't focus on school. I dropped out, took the waitressing job to pay rent. That's when I met Keller. Nathan's expression shifted, something like recognition crossing his face. Your brother, what was his name? Thomas Chen. He died 2 years ago. Marcus had been right. Chen wasn't a common name in their world. Nathan knew of Thomas Chen, a small-time gambler who had gotten in over his head with one of the Italian families. Nathan's organization hadn't been involved, but he remembered hearing about it. The kid had been beaten to death in an alley, his body left as a warning to others. I'm sorry, Nathan said, and meant it. Losing family, it changes you. It did, Iris agreed. It made me realize how fragile everything is, how quickly your life can be destroyed by people who don't care about anything except power and money. She met his eyes. People like you. Nathan didn't flinch from the accusation. Yes, people like me. I won't apologize for what I am, Iris. I've done terrible things to build this empire. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, but I also protect my own. And right now, you're one of mine. Why? Iris asked. Why do you care? You could have thrown me out that first night and never looked back. Why didn't you? Nathan was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. Because I had a sister once. Her name was Elena. She was brave and stubborn, a lot like you. She witnessed a murder and agreed to testify. The system promised to protect her. They failed. She died because I wasn't powerful enough to save her. Understanding dawned in Iris's eyes. I remind you of her. You do, Nathan admitted. And maybe that's why I'm doing this. Maybe I'm trying to save her by saving you. Or maybe I'm just tired of watching monsters like Keller destroy innocent people while the system looks the other way. He stood, moving toward the door. Either way, you're under my protection, and I always protect what's mine. After he left, Iris lay back down, but sleep was even more elusive than before. She thought about Nathan's sister, about her own brother, about all the lives destroyed by violence and greed. She thought about Keller, somewhere in the city, probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that his world was about to collapse. And she thought about Nathan Cross, the crime lord with gray eyes and a code of honor that made no sense, and perfect sense at the same time. The next morning, Keller discovered that his laptop had been wiped. Every file, every photo, every carefully documented crime, gone. In their place was a single message. I'm watching you. He tore his apartment apart looking for cameras, for bugs, for any sign of surveillance. He found nothing. Whoever had done this was a professional, someone with resources and expertise. For the first time in his career, David Keller felt afraid. At the Monarch Club, Nathan received word of Keller's panic with grim satisfaction. The game had begun, and Nathan Cross always played to win. The breaking point came on a cold November morning when frost painted the windows of the Monarch Club in delicate patterns, and the city woke to news that would dominate headlines for weeks. Detective David Keller had been suspended pending investigation. Nathan learned about it from his contact in the police department, a deputy commissioner who owed him several favors and knew better than to ask questions. The call came at 7 a.m, waking Nathan from the few hours of sleep he had managed to steal. Internal Affairs received an anonymous package, the deputy commissioner explained, his voice tight with barely concealed anger. Photos, videos, surveillance footage, evidence of stalking, harassment, possibly worse. They had no choice but to suspend him pending a full investigation. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. The package hadn't been anonymous, of course. It had been carefully curated and delivered by one of Marcus's people, a former cop who knew exactly how to navigate the bureaucracy of police investigations. "How is Keller taking it?" Nathan asked. "He's claiming he's being framed. Says someone hacked his personal computer and fabricated evidence. But the tech guys say the files are authentic, and some of the victims have already been contacted. 2 of them are willing to testify." "Good," Nathan said. "Keep me informed." He ended the call and stood at his office window, watching the city come to life. Below, delivery trucks navigated the narrow streets, and early morning commuters hurried toward the train station, their breath visible in the cold air. Chicago in November was a study in gray sky, gray buildings, gray slush in the gutters. But Nathan had always found beauty in the city's harshness, its refusal to apologize for what it was. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Iris entered, dressed in jeans and a borrowed leather jacket. Her arm was out of the sling now, though she still favored her injured shoulder. She had been healing well, both physically and mentally. The haunted look in her eyes had faded, replaced by something harder, more determined. "I heard," she said without preamble. "Keller's been suspended." "News travels fast," Nathan observed. "Marcus told me." She crossed to the window, standing beside him. "You did this. You made it happen." "I provided evidence of his crimes to the appropriate authorities," Nathan said. "What they do with that evidence is their decision." Iris turned to look at him, and he saw anger in her eyes, not directed at him, but at the situation. "It's not enough. Suspension isn't justice. He'll hire a good lawyer, claim the evidence was obtained illegally, get it thrown out. Men like him always find a way to escape." "Not this time," Nathan said quietly. "I've made sure of that." Before Iris could respond, Marcus burst into the office without knocking, his phone pressed to his ear, and his expression grim. "We have a problem," he said, ending his call. "Keller's partner, Detective Reeves, just showed up at the club's front entrance. She's asking to speak with you." Nathan exchanged a glance with Iris. "Did she say why?" "No, but she's alone, and she's not acting official. No backup, no warrant. Whatever this is, it's personal." Nathan considered for a moment, then nodded. "Bring her up, but search her first. I don't want any surprises." 5 minutes later, Detective Lisa Reeves stood in Nathan's office, her service weapon confiscated, and her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. She was in her mid-30s, with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans and a jacket rather than her usual professional attire, confirming Marcus's assessment that this visit was off the books. "Mr. Cross," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Thank you for seeing me." "Detective Reeves," Nathan replied, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit. Can I offer you coffee?" "I'm not here for pleasantries," Reeves said, but she sat anyway. Her eyes flicked to Iris, recognition dawning. "You're Iris Chen, the woman from the shooting." Iris said nothing, but she moved closer to Nathan's desk, a subtle show of solidarity. Reeves turned her attention back to Nathan. "I know what you did. I know you're the one who sent that package to Internal Affairs. The evidence against David, it came from you." "That's quite an accusation," Nathan said mildly. "Do you have proof?" "I don't need proof. I know how this city works. I know who you are and what you're capable of." Reeves leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly together. "What I don't know is why. Why would Nathan Cross, one of the most powerful criminals in Chicago, suddenly care about a suspended detective?" Nathan studied her carefully. She was intelligent, that much was clear. And she was here without backup. which meant she was either very brave or very desperate. Possibly both. "Why don't you tell me what you think is happening?" Nathan suggested. Reeves glanced at Iris again, and something in her expression shifted. "David told me about you. He said you were unstable, that you had accused him of stalking you. He said you were trying to ruin his career because he rejected you, and you believed him," Iris said, her voice cold. "I did," Reeves admitted. "David was my partner. We've worked together for 3 years. I thought I knew him." She paused, her jaw tightening. "But then I saw the evidence, the photos, the videos, and I started asking questions, looking into cases he'd worked on. Women who had filed complaints against him, women who later disappeared or died. The pattern was there. I didn't want to see it." "Because you were sleeping with him," Nathan said bluntly. Reeves flinched but didn't deny it. "Yes, we were involved, which makes me either the world's worst detective or the world's biggest fool. Maybe both." "What do you want, detective?" Nathan asked. "I want to know if it's true. All of it. Is David really a serial killer?" Nathan looked at Iris, who nodded slightly. He pulled out his phone and showed Reeves the video of Iris tied to the chair, Keller's voice calm and menacing as he explained why he had to hurt her. Reeves watched in silence, her face growing paler with each passing second. When the video ended, she sat back in her chair, her hands shaking. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I've been sleeping with a monster." "Yes," Nathan said simply. "You have. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Reeves looked up at him, and in her eyes Nathan saw the same determination he had seen in Iris. "I'm going to help you destroy him. I'm going to make sure he never hurts anyone again." "Why?" Iris asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Why should we trust you? You're his partner. You could be here to gather information for him." "Because I'm a cop," Reeves said, her voice hardening. "A real cop, not whatever David became. I took an oath to protect people, and I failed. I let a killer operate right under my nose because I was too blind or too stupid to see what he was. I can't undo that, but I can make sure he pays for what he's done." Nathan considered her words carefully. He had learned long ago that people revealed their true nature in moments of crisis. Reeves was either genuinely horrified by what she had discovered, or she was an exceptional actress. His instincts told him it was the former. "If you help us," Nathan said slowly, "you'll be crossing a line. You'll be working with a criminal to bring down a fellow officer. Your career will be over. You might even face charges." "I don't care," Reeves said. "My career is already over. The moment I got involved with David, the moment I ignored the warning signs, I compromised everything I stand for. At least this way, I can do some good before I go down." Nathan glanced at Marcus, who gave a slight nod. They were both thinking the same thing. Having a cop on their side, even a disgraced one, could be useful. "All right," Nathan said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue your relationship with Keller. Pretend you believe his story about being framed. You're going to gather evidence, real evidence, the kind that will hold up in court. And when the time comes, you're going to testify against him." "He'll know I'm working against him," Reeves protested. "He's paranoid now, suspicious of everyone." "Then you'll have to be convincing," Nathan said coldly. "Because if you fail, if you tip him off, Iris dies, and then you die. Do you understand?" Reeves met his gaze without flinching. "I understand." "Good." Nathan stood, signaling that the meeting was over. "Marcus will give you a secure phone. Use it to contact us. And detective, don't make me regret trusting you." After Reeves left, Iris turned to Nathan. "Do you really trust her?" "No," Nathan admitted. "But I trust her guilt. She's desperate to make this right, and desperate people are useful. And if she betrays us?" Nathan's expression was cold. "Then I'll handle it, the same way I handle all betrayals." Over the next week, the situation escalated in ways Nathan hadn't anticipated. Keller, suspended and under investigation, became increasingly erratic. He showed up at the homes of the women who had agreed to testify against him, trying to intimidate them into silence. He made threats, thinly veiled as warnings. He was a man watching his carefully constructed life collapse, and he was lashing out in desperation. Nathan had people watching Keller around the clock, documenting his every move. Each threat, each violation of his suspension terms, was recorded and forwarded to internal affairs. The noose was tightening, but Keller was also watching. He had figured out that Nathan was behind his troubles, and he was planning his revenge. It came on a Friday night, when the Monarch Club was packed with its usual crowd of politicians, businessmen, and criminals pretending to be legitimate. Nathan was in his office, reviewing reports when the power went out. The club plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a sickly red glow. And then Nathan heard it, gunfire, coming from the main floor. He was moving before conscious thought, his Glock in his hand, Marcus at his side. They burst out of the office and onto the balcony overlooking the club. Below, chaos reigned. Patrons were screaming, diving for cover, and in the center of the room stood David Keller, a pistol in each hand, firing wildly. "Where is she?" Keller screamed. "Where's Iris? I know she's here." Nathan's security team was already responding, weapons drawn, trying to get a clear shot without hitting civilians. But Keller was using the panicked crowd as cover, moving constantly, unpredictable in his rage. "Nathan!" Iris's voice came from behind him. She had followed them from the office, her face pale but determined. "Get back!" Nathan ordered, but it was too late. Keller spotted her on the balcony, his face twisted into something inhuman, all pretense of sanity gone. "There you are," he said, his voice carrying over the screams. "You ruined everything. You took everything from me!" He raised his pistol, aiming at Iris. Nathan moved without thinking, putting himself between her and the gun. Time seemed to slow. He saw Keller's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the muzzle flash. The bullet hit Nathan in the chest, the impact spinning him around. He felt himself falling, heard Iris screaming his name. Then Marcus was there, returning fire, and Keller was going down, blood blooming across his shirt. Nathan hit the floor hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. He tried to breathe and couldn't. His chest felt like it was on fire. Through dimming vision, he saw Iris kneeling beside him, her hands pressed against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she was saying, tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, stay with me. You don't get to die. Not for me. Not like this." He wanted to tell her it was all right, that he had made his choice, that protecting her was worth it. But darkness was closing in, and the words wouldn't come. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Iris's face, and the last thing he thought was that he had finally kept his promise to his sister. This time, he had been strong enough to save someone. Nathan woke to the sterile smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of medical equipment. His chest felt like someone had driven a truck over it, and breathing required conscious effort. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his torso. "Easy," a familiar voice said. Dr. Morrison appeared in his field of vision, pressing him gently back down. "You took a bullet to the chest. You're lucky it hit the vest." Nathan's hand moved to his chest, feeling the heavy bandaging beneath the hospital gown. "Vest?" His voice came out as a rasp. "Kevlar," Morrison explained. "You've been wearing it under your suits for years. It saved your life. The bullet didn't penetrate, but you have 3 cracked ribs and severe bruising. You'll be in pain for weeks." Memory flooded back. Keller in the club, the gun aimed at Iris, the decision to step in front of the bullet. "Iris," Nathan managed. "Where is she?" "I'm here," Iris said, moving into view on his other side. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying, but she was unharmed. "I'm okay, thanks to you." Nathan tried to speak, but Morrison held up a hand. "Before you ask, Keller is dead. Your man Marcus put 2 bullets in him. Clean shots, center mass. He died at the scene." Relief washed over Nathan, followed immediately by a wave of exhaustion. Keller was gone. The threat was over. Iris was safe. "How long have I been out?" he asked. 18 hours, Morrison replied. "You're in a private facility, not a hospital. No records, no police reports. As far as the official story goes, David Keller went on a rampage at the Monarch Club and was killed by security. You weren't there." Nathan understood. Marcus had cleaned up the scene, created a narrative that protected Nathan's identity, and kept him out of police custody. It was standard procedure for situations like this, but Nathan was still impressed by how quickly his lieutenant had acted. "I need to talk to Marcus," Nathan said. "He's outside," Iris said. "I'll get him." When she left, Morrison leaned closer, his expression serious. "Nathan, you need to rest. Your body has been through significant trauma. If you don't take time to heal properly, I'll rest when this is finished. Nathan interrupted. How soon can I leave? Morrison sighed, recognizing the futility of arguing. 24 hours minimum, and only if you promise to take it easy for at least a week. No stress, no physical activity, no— Fine, Nathan said, cutting him off. 24 hours. Marcus entered the room, his usual composed expression showing cracks of concern. You look like hell, he said bluntly. I feel worse, Nathan admitted. Tell me what happened after I went down. Marcus pulled up a chair, settling in for what was clearly going to be a detailed report. Keller fired 6 shots total. 3 went wild. 1 hit you, 1 hit a chandelier, and 1 grazed a civilian. Minor injury, already treated and compensated. I returned fire. 2 shots, both fatal. Keller was dead before he hit the ground. Witnesses? 43 people in the club at the time. All of them are telling the same story. A deranged ex-cop went on a shooting spree and was stopped by security. The police are treating it as a clear case of self-defense. Detective Reeves has been helpful in managing the narrative. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Reeves? She showed up at the scene within minutes of the shooting, took control of the investigation, made sure the right story got into the official reports. She's been suspended too, pending review of her relationship with Keller, but she's cooperating fully. I think she's genuinely trying to make amends. What about internal affairs? The investigation into Keller? Moving forward, Marcus said. With Keller dead, they're focusing on identifying his victims and closing open cases. 2 more women have come forward with allegations. The evidence we provided is being used to connect Keller to at least 4 unsolved murders. His legacy is going to be as a serial killer who hid behind a badge. Nathan absorbed this information, feeling a grim satisfaction. Keller was dead, his crimes exposed, his victims vindicated. It wasn't perfect justice. The man had escaped trial, escaped prison, but it was something. And the club? Nathan asked. Repairs are already underway. We'll be open again in 3 days. The shooting has actually increased our notoriety. People want to see where it happened, want to feel close to the danger. It's morbid, but profitable. Nathan almost smiled. Trust Marcus to find the business angle in attempted murder. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his tone shifting. We found something in Keller's apartment after he died. A journal. He'd been documenting his crimes for years, writing about his victims, his methods, his feelings about what he did. Feelings, Nathan repeated. He saw himself as a collector, Marcus explained. He wrote about the women he stalked like they were objects he was acquiring. He described the fear in their eyes, the moment they realized they couldn't escape. It's disturbing reading, but it's also a complete confession. Every unsolved case, every missing woman, it's all there. Nathan felt a cold fury settle over him. Even in death, Keller was revealing himself to be more monstrous than anyone had imagined. Give the journal to Reeves, Nathan said. Let her turn it over to internal affairs. Those women's families deserve closure. Marcus nodded and stood to leave, but paused at the door. Nathan, what you did, stepping in front of that bullet, it was reckless. You could have died, but I didn't, Nathan said simply. No, you didn't, but you need to ask yourself why you did it. Was it really about protecting Iris, or was it about something else? After Marcus left, Nathan lay in the quiet room, considering his friend's question. Why had he stepped in front of that bullet? Was it because Iris reminded him of his sister? Was it guilt over Elena's death, a chance to rewrite history? Or was it something simpler, the recognition that Iris was innocent, that she deserved protection, that letting her die would have made him no better than the monsters he claimed to fight? He didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Iris returned an hour later, carrying a bag from a nearby deli. I brought food, she said. Morrison says you need to eat. Nathan wasn't hungry, but he accepted the sandwich she offered, forcing himself to take a few bites. Iris sat beside his bed, picking at her own food without much enthusiasm. Thank you, she said finally, for what you did, for protecting me. You've already thanked me, Nathan said. I know, but I don't think you understand what it meant. My whole life, I've had to protect myself. My parents died when I was young. My brother was killed and then Keller. She trailed off, her eyes distant. No one has ever put themselves in danger for me. No one has ever cared enough. I care, Nathan said, surprised by how true it was. Somewhere over the past 2 weeks, Iris had stopped being just a responsibility and had become something more, not a replacement for his sister. No one could be that, but someone worth protecting in her own right. I know you do, Iris said softly. And that terrifies me. Why? Because people who care about me end up dead. My parents, my brother, even Sarah, my roommate, everyone I get close to, everyone who tries to help me, they all die. I don't want that to happen to you. Nathan reached out, taking her hand. The gesture felt awkward, unfamiliar. He wasn't a man who offered comfort easily. But Iris needed to hear this, and he needed to say it. I'm not going to die, he said firmly. And neither are you. Keller is gone. The threat is over. You're safe now. Am I? Iris asked. Or have I just traded one dangerous situation for another? You're a crime lord, Nathan. You've told me yourself that you've done terrible things. How do I know I'm not just exchanging one monster for another? It was a fair question, one Nathan had asked himself more than once. You don't, he admitted. I can't promise you that I'm a good man, Iris. I'm not. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built my empire on violence and fear. But I can promise you this. I will never hurt you. And I will never let anyone else hurt you either. Iris studied his face, searching for something. Truth, perhaps, or sincerity. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because she squeezed his hand and nodded. Okay, she said. I believe you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the steady beep of the heart monitor. Finally, Iris spoke again. What happens now? Keller is dead, but I don't have a life to go back to. No job, no apartment, no money. Everything I had is gone. Nathan had been thinking about this problem. You'll stay at the club, he said. I have a permanent apartment on the top floor. It's yours for as long as you need it. And as for work, he paused, an idea forming. You said you studied computer science. How would you feel about working for me? Iris raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Security systems, digital surveillance, encryption. The kind of technical work that requires someone smart and trustworthy. Marcus handles the physical security, but we need someone who understands the digital side of things. Someone who can protect us from the kind of hacking we did to Keller. You want me to be your hacker, Iris said, a hint of amusement in her voice. I want you to be part of my organization, Nathan corrected. If you're interested. Iris considered the offer. A month ago, she would have been horrified at the idea of working for a criminal. But a month ago, she had been a different person. Naive, trusting, believing that the system would protect her. Now she knew better. The system had failed her. Nathan Cross had saved her. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask, Nathan replied. Over the next week, Nathan recovered at the private facility while his empire continued to function without him. Marcus handled day-to-day operations, and Iris visited daily, bringing news from the outside world. Detective Reeves had been officially suspended, but was cooperating with the investigation into Keller. She had turned over his journal, and the revelations had sent shockwaves through the Chicago Police Department. 7 women were now confirmed as Keller's victims, with 3 more cases under review. The department was facing lawsuits and public outcry over how a serial killer had operated within their ranks for over a decade. Reeves herself had become something of a tragic figure, the detective who had been sleeping with a monster, who had missed the signs, who was now trying to make amends. Nathan felt a grudging respect for her. She had made mistakes, but she was owning them, trying to do right by Keller's victims, even as her own career burned around her. On the 8th day, Nathan was finally cleared to leave. Morrison gave him a list of restrictions and medications, all of which Nathan promptly ignored. He returned to the Monarch Club to find it restored to its former glory, the bullet holes repaired, the blood cleaned away. It was as if the shooting had never happened. But Nathan knew better. The shooting had changed everything. It had exposed vulnerabilities in his security, revealed enemies he hadn't known existed, and forced him to confront questions about who he was and what he was willing to sacrifice. It had also brought Iris into his life, and he was beginning to realize that might be the most significant change of all. That night, he sat in his usual booth, a glass of bourbon untouched in front of him, and watched Iris work at a laptop Marcus had provided. She had accepted his job offer, and she was already proving her worth, identifying weaknesses in their digital infrastructure and proposing solutions. She looked up, catching him watching her, and smiled. It was a genuine smile, free of the fear and suspicion that had marked their early interactions. What? She asked. Nothing, Nathan said. I'm just glad you're here. Me too, Iris replied, and returned to her work. Outside, Chicago continued its endless cycle of life and death, crime and punishment, power and corruption. But inside the Monarch Club, In this small pocket of controlled chaos, Nathan Cross had found something he thought he'd lost forever, a reason to protect someone other than himself, and for now, that was enough. 3 months after David Keller's death, Chicago settled into a new equilibrium. The scandal surrounding the detective's crimes had rocked the police department, leading to reforms, resignations, and a renewed focus on internal oversight. Detective Lisa Reeves had resigned from the force, her career a casualty of her association with Keller, but she had found work as a private investigator, specializing in cases involving stalking and domestic violence. She and Iris had formed an unlikely friendship, 2 women bound by their shared trauma and determination to prevent others from suffering as they had. The Monarch Club thrived. The shooting had brought unwanted attention initially, but Nathan had weathered the scrutiny with his usual calculated precision. The official narrative, that a deranged ex-cop had targeted the club and been stopped by security, had held up under investigation. No charges were filed, no uncomfortable questions asked. Nathan's connections in the city government had ensured that, but the real changes were internal, invisible to outsiders. Nathan stood in his office on a cold February morning, watching snow fall over the city. His ribs had healed, though he still felt occasional twinges of pain when the weather changed. Dr. Morrison had warned him that the injury might trouble him for years, a permanent reminder of the night he had stepped in front of a bullet. Nathan didn't mind. Scars were proof of survival, evidence that you had faced death and won. Behind him, Iris worked at her desk, a permanent fixture in his office now. She had transformed his digital security, implementing encryption protocols and surveillance systems that made the Monarch Club one of the most secure locations in Chicago. She had also proven invaluable in other ways, using her technical skills to gather intelligence on rivals, track shipments, and monitor police activity. She had become, in the span of 3 months, indispensable. "Nathan," she said, pulling his attention from the window. "You need to see this." He crossed to her desk, looking at the laptop screen. It showed surveillance footage from outside the club, time-stamped from earlier that morning. A man stood across the street, watching the entrance. He was tall, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Who is he?" Nathan asked. "FBI," Iris replied, pulling up a second window with the man's identification. "Special Agent Robert Chen. He's been watching the club for 3 days now." Nathan's eyes narrowed at the surname. "Chen, any relation to you?" Iris's expression tightened. "My uncle. My father's brother. I haven't seen him in 5 years. Not since my brother's funeral. What does the FBI want with you?" "I don't know," Iris admitted. "But if he's here, it's not a coincidence." Nathan made a decision quickly. "Invite him in. Let's find out what he wants." 30 minutes later, Special Agent Robert Chen sat in Nathan's office, declining the offer of coffee with a curt shake of his head. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that reminded Nathan uncomfortably of Iris. The family resemblance was clear. "Mr. Cross," Chen began, his voice formal. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "Agent Chen," Nathan replied, settling into his chair with careful control. His ribs still protested sudden movements. "What brings the FBI to my establishment?" Chen's eyes flicked to Iris, who stood by the window, her arms crossed defensively. "I'm here about my niece. I've been trying to locate her for months. Imagine my surprise when I discovered she was living under the protection of one of Chicago's most notorious crime lords." "I'm not under his protection," Iris said sharply. "I work for him." "Doing what?" Chen asked, his tone skeptical. "Digital security," Iris replied. "It's legitimate work." "Nothing about Nathan Cross is legitimate," Chen countered, turning back to Nathan. "You run a criminal empire. Gambling, extortion, money laundering. The only reason you're not in prison is because you're smart enough to keep your hands clean and rich enough to buy protection." Nathan didn't react to the accusations. He had heard them all before, from men far more intimidating than an FBI agent. "Is there a point to this visit, Agent Chen, or are you just here to insult me?" Chen leaned forward, his expression hardening. "The point is that my niece deserves better than this. She's a smart girl, talented, with her whole life ahead of her. Working for you will destroy her future. It will make her complicit in your crimes." "I'm not a child," Iris interjected, her voice rising. "I can make my own decisions. And after what I've been through, after what the system failed to protect me from, I'll work for whoever I damn well please." Chen's expression softened slightly. "I heard about Detective Keller. I'm sorry you went through that. But that doesn't mean you should throw your life away working for a criminal. Nathan saved my life, Iris said fiercely. When the police couldn't help me, when I had nowhere else to turn, he protected me. He put himself in danger for me. So don't come in here and tell me I'm making a mistake. The room fell silent. Chen looked between Iris and Nathan, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, perhaps, or resignation. I see, he said quietly. You care about him. Iris didn't deny it. Yes, I do. Chen stood, straightening his jacket. Then I suppose there's nothing more to say. But Iris, if you ever need help, if you ever want out of this life, call me. I'm still your family, even if you don't want to acknowledge it. He pulled out a business card and placed it on Nathan's desk, then left without another word. After he was gone, Iris sank into a chair, her hands shaking. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know he was looking for me. I didn't think anyone in my family cared enough to try. Nathan picked up the business card, studying it. He cares. That much is obvious. The question is whether he's going to be a problem. He won't be, Iris said, with more confidence than she felt. He's a good man, but he respects boundaries. He won't interfere unless I ask him to. Nathan hoped she was right. The last thing he needed was FBI scrutiny, especially now, when his organization was expanding into new territories. Over the following weeks, Nathan's empire grew. With Keller dead and the police department in disarray, opportunities had opened up. Nathan moved carefully, consolidating power, making alliances, eliminating threats. The Vitale family, which had been testing his boundaries for months, made the mistake of pushing too hard. Nathan responded with calculated brutality, cutting off their supply lines and forcing them to the negotiating table. The resulting treaty gave Nathan control of the north side, expanding his territory significantly. Through it all, Iris was at his side. She had become more than an employee, more than someone he protected. She had become his partner, his confidant, the person he trusted most after Marcus. She understood his world in a way few others did, having seen both its brutality and its strange code of honor. One evening in early March, as the city began to thaw from winter's grip, Nathan and Iris stood on the roof of the Monarch Club, looking out over Chicago. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the city lights were beginning to flicker on like stars. Do you ever regret it? Iris asked suddenly. The choices you've made? The life you've built? Nathan considered the question carefully. Regret is a luxury I can't afford. Every choice I've made, good or bad, has led me here. If I regret them, I regret everything, including the people I've protected and the empire I've built. That's not really an answer, Iris observed. Nathan smiled slightly. No, I suppose it's not. The truth is, I don't know if I regret my choices. I know I've hurt people. I know I've done things that can't be forgiven. But I also know that I've protected people who had no one else. I've provided for those loyal to me. I've built something that will outlast me. And is that enough? Iris asked. Building an empire? It used to be, Nathan admitted. But lately I've been thinking that maybe there's more to life than power and control. Maybe there's value in protecting someone not because they're useful, but because they matter. Iris turned to look at him, and in the fading light, her eyes were soft. Are you talking about me? Yes, Nathan said simply. I'm talking about you. She moved closer, and Nathan found himself reaching for her hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental, an acknowledgement of something that had been building between them for months. I care about you, Nathan said, the words feeling strange and vulnerable. More than I should, probably. More than is wise. I care about you too, Iris replied, even though you're a criminal and a terrible person by most standards. Nathan laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. That's probably the most honest assessment anyone's ever given me. I'm good at honesty, Iris said, smiling. It's one of my few virtues. They stood together as the sun finished setting, the city spreading out below them in all its flawed, beautiful complexity. Nathan had spent 20 years building his empire, accumulating power, eliminating threats. But standing here with Iris, he realized that all of it, the money, the influence, the fear he inspired, meant nothing compared to this moment. He had spent his life trying to be strong enough to protect what mattered. And now, finally, he had something worth protecting. 2 weeks later, Detective Lisa Reeves called with news. The investigation into Keller's crimes had concluded. 7 murders confirmed, 3 more suspected. The families of his victims had been notified, and several were pursuing civil suits against the Chicago Police Department for failing to stop him. "There's something else," Reeves said over the phone. "The department is creating a new task force, focused on investigating officers accused of misconduct. They want me to consult on it, help them identify warning signs and patterns. It's not much, but it's a start." "That's good," Nathan said, meaning it. "Those women's families deserve justice, even if it's incomplete." "They do," Reeves agreed. "And Nathan, thank you for everything. I know I came to you as a last resort, and I know you had no reason to trust me, but you gave me a chance to make things right. I won't forget that." After the call ended, Nathan sat in his office, thinking about justice and redemption. He had spent his life operating outside the law, believing that the system was corrupt and ineffective, and in many ways, he had been right. The system had failed Iris, had failed Keller's victims, had failed his sister, but the system was also capable of change, of learning from its mistakes. Maybe that was the real lesson, that justice wasn't about perfection, but about continuing to try, continuing to fight, even when the odds seemed impossible. That night, the Monarch Club hosted a private party for Nathan's inner circle. Marcus was there, along with his top lieutenants and their families. Iris moved through the crowd with easy confidence, no longer the terrified girl who had stumbled through the door 3 months ago. She had found her place in Nathan's world, carved out a role that was uniquely hers. Nathan watched her from his usual booth, a glass of bourbon in his hand. The club was filled with laughter and music, the kind of controlled celebration that Nathan allowed on rare occasions. These were his people, the ones who had stood by him through wars and investigations, who had proven their loyalty time and again. Iris caught his eye from across the room and smiled, raising her glass in a silent toast. Nathan returned the gesture, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the recognition that he had finally kept his promise to his sister. He had been strong enough to save someone. And in saving Iris, he had saved something in himself, a piece of humanity he thought he had lost years ago. The rain that had marked the beginning of their story had given way to spring sunshine. Chicago was coming back to life, and so was Nathan Cross. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of light and shadow, crime and punishment, power and redemption. But inside the Monarch Club, Nathan had found something more valuable than any empire, a reason to believe that even men like him could change, could protect, could care. And for the first time in 20 years, Nathan Cross looked toward the future not with calculation, but with something resembling peace. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more emotional narratives like this one. Leave a comment below telling us which moment resonated with you the most, and don't forget to hit the like button to support our content. Thank you for listening.